Welcome to day 4 of the beat making challenge, and today we're going to be going over essential hi-hat training. A lot of people think hi-hats are just, rolling them and then you're done with them. There's a lot of little nuances and a lot of small details that can make them sound amazing. A lot of people either try to overcomplicate them, or a lot of people's hi-hats aren't really that distinguishable and they're just kind of running in the background, not doing a lot. But in this video, we're going to show you exactly the different tips and tricks you can do to actually make your hi-hat sound interesting. We're going to show you variations, so that way you're just not kind of doing the same rolls here and there. And then the whole point of this video is for you to learn the different concepts and then to use the free resources that we actually included with this challenge to make a lot of different variations for yourself. Up until this point, you should be able to find the key of a melody loop, so you can add the 808s, which is actually coming up tomorrow. You should be able to add basic drums to your track. And now we're going to layer in that essential hi-hat training to really take it to the next level, because hi-hats are an extremely important part of hip hop as well as modern trap music. So I'll definitely say that this video is very, very important. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a couple specific exercises that you need to practice after this video, because let's be honest, guys, watching a video isn't enough. That stuff doesn't go deep into your brain, and it's not going to become useful until you actually do it, until you actually take action. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this training. Peace.
Hey guys, this is Nick with Cymatics.fm. Welcome to day number 4 of our 7-day beat making challenge. Today we're going to be talking about how to spruce up your hi-hats and make them sound more interesting. In the last video, we made this drum track for our hip hop song. And that's already fairly reasonable. You must have heard lots of different songs with this exact format, maybe with minor differences. But what we're going to do is actually make the hi-hat track have a lot more interesting, fancy elements to it, because the reason the hi-hats are really crucial to a hip-hop song, an interesting hip-hop song, is that you can be a lot more free rhythmically with the hi-hat. You can do whatever you want in terms of the rhythm, and that's where you're going to get a lot of the embellishments and a lot of the ear candy is in the hi-hat track. So I'm going to teach you guys how to really kind of up your hi-hat game. There's a few really key kind of core concepts that everybody uses that I will teach you guys here. And the main element here revolves around shortening the grid. So we have a 1/8 grid here. Let's make that the shortest part. Let's make 1/32. Okay, this is generally speaking, this is going to work fairly well, but this is after you've already written your basic hi-hat pattern in 1/8. So nothing has changed, we just changed the grid. And the first thing we're going to start to do is add some hi-hat rolls. And this can be done just by taking some of the notes, rewriting them, and just kind of stacking very short 1/32 notes. You can do a different division if you want, or you can do whatever length of note you want. But generally 1/32 will work for you. It'll sound good. And if you don't want to think too much about it and you just want to have a hi-hat roll that'll suit the song, 1/32 usually will work. So let's just try and listen to that. So that already sounds very typical, and you heard that kind of idea in lots of different songs. But what we can try to do is add a bit of space here. So let's delete the last note here and make this little short 3-note roll kind of like a hi-hat in itself. It'll be kind of one of these hi-hats going along, but this one will just be kind of a stuttery hi-hat made of 3 short notes, and I'll show you what I mean when I play this. Kind of just chugs along and adds a lot of skitter to the hi-hat track and makes it a bit more interesting than just a static sort of robotic feeling hi-hat. And this is what you're going to be doing. This is where producers can really stand apart from one another in terms of their style and their sound, is how they treat their hi-hats and how they find interesting and creative ways of managing the hi-hats and throwing them around and making them sound cooler. That's really where a lot of your personal style and identity as a producer will come from, especially in hip-hop music. So I really suggest you guys experiment with trial and error and just try out different ideas and tricks, like moving the notes around, trying different. So for instance here, I'm just going to divide this in half and start the phrase with 2 hi-hat notes right away. So this first half of the bar sounds really great, this first bar, but the second bar is just these static notes. We're not going to go too crazy, we're not going to go overboard with these tricks, but we still want to have something happen in the second half to satisfy the ear, right? Because something is missing. So what we're going to do is do the same sort of hi-hat roll at the end, and this will sound fine. Kind of ties up the bar. But instead what we're going to do, and this is the whole point of writing this in a MIDI clip with the keyboard, is that we can move this around and put it on different pitches. And this is also a very standard trick. You should take note of this kind of descending hi-hat roll. So that's a very typical trick, and that really starts to add a lot more finesse to your hi-hats, right? Another cool thing you can do, since you have all these notes to work with, you can kind of add little off hi-hats to make it sound cooler. And you can kind of align them with the ones you already have. That sounds really nice to me. And what we're going to do from here on, I think the actual hi-hat is basically ready. I don't want to do too much to it because then it starts to sound a bit kind of ridiculous. You want to just embellish it with these tricks. Don't make them the actual entire hi-hat part. Just embellish a standard straight pattern with a few embellishments. And that's a less is more approach here. Another interesting thing you can do is to make it feel a bit more organic. We can change the velocities of these notes, and velocity is just the volume of each individual note. So if I kind of change these around, right, not in a totally random way, but usually if there's these long eighth notes, I can kind of alternate their volume. And if I go alternating like loud, quiet, that'll give you a more natural feeling. And less robotic sort of machine gun style sound. So let's just do that. Making sure that the correct notes are getting affected here. And we can just duplicate it. Actually, I'll just copy paste these first notes here. It's a subtle change, but it gives a lot more dynamic, a lot more of a dynamic feeling to the hi-hats. Okay, another thing you can do, and this is also very important, is adding more samples, adding more hi-hat samples. So for instance, open hi-hats, that's a very unique and interesting way of adding a bit more weight to your hi-hat track. You're not just going to have one single sample, but you're also going to throw new textures in there with open hats or using other hi-hat samples. Open hats really do help that a lot. So I have this open hat sample here. And we're just going to use that very sparingly across the hi-hat, just peppering it in to really sort of tie in the phrase. So I can throw it in at the very end here to sort of accent the end of the bar. And we can stretch that out to make sure it lasts the entire duration. Another cool thing we can do is change the pitch of it and add it in the beginning somewhere. And we can make it shorter this time. So this one is long, but we can make the lower ones shorter, and it's almost going to sound like a hi-hat because it's a very short open hat. Right? So notice how much freedom we have here. Maybe that's a bit high. We can bring that down. And finally, what we can do is kind of change the panning a bit. So I'm going to pan my regular hi-hat maybe 15 to the left and have my open hi-hat go 15 to the right. So just with those simple tricks, with playing with pitch, with playing with velocity, playing with the timings of notes, we were able to go from a very basic static eighth note hi-hat to something way more interesting and dynamic. And that's really where the personality of the song will come from. And my only word of advice here is to don't go overboard with this. This is really a less is more sort of concept, and just use these as embellishments to a fairly standard eighth note pattern or quarter note or 16th note pattern, and occasionally use these tricks as just to embellish it to keep the ear interested. That's all you really need them for. I hope you guys learned something about how to spruce up your hi-hats for your hip-hop song, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.
All right, so now that you watched that video, you got a couple homework assignments. First off, you should have already downloaded the resources pack for the 7-day beat making challenge. If you haven't, it should be a link in the description. At this point, you should have a ton of different melody loops. You should have had already added drums from the How to Make Simple Drums video. And now what I want you to do is I want you to make about 10 different basic drum patterns, use about 10 different loops, and then go in on each one and practice the hi-hat techniques that were talked about in this video. And every single one, maybe practice something different, maybe do a different variation combination of what Nick talked about in the video and try to make different stuff to see what works and what doesn't. And if you've been doing your homework listening to reference music every single day that we started with day one, you're going to have a lot of ideas and you're going to connect the dots between the reference tracks you've been listening to and the different producers you're in love with and the sound you're going for and the different concepts that Nick has been talking about. And we're going to fuse those things together so that way you can start to get closer towards your destination with production. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video and get ready for tomorrow's video because we got 808s. Peace.